So earlier today, I was watching Lynn Goge's channel, one of my favorite YouTubers, probably one of the biggest ones in Kenya. If you guys are familiar with her, she covers all things Kenya, political, you name it, all that. Now, on today's episode, she was based in the UK and she was interviewing a lot of the Kenyan diaspora that are living over there. And the topic of the conversation was obviously politics and what's going on back home and how what the temperament is from the diaspora over there. Now, one thing I loved about the episode, it was focused on how things should be and how things should change. Plus, there was a older gentleman on the channel, about two of them, who gave a lot of insight of how Kenya once was and how things have changed, both for the good and for the bad. So, I started thinking to myself, how realistic would it be for the young generation to start holding positions in our politics? Because it was also discussed in the episode. And one thing that I loved about the episode is one lady on there stressed that as much as the youth may love to go to mandamanos and go out there and protest, all of that will be in vain if voting doesn't actually start to happen. If they don't go get their ID cards and if they don't actually show up to the polling stations, which I agree with. So, on this episode, I wanted to talk about that realisticness of the young people actually holding these positions. And the number one thing I want to start off with is the strength that the youth hold. Um, let's first look at the Kenyan demographics. Kenya has a young population with a median age of around 20 years. The majority of the population is under 35 years old. Specifically, approximately 75% of the population is under 35. That right there is crazy. 75% of the population, three-fourths of the population is under 35. And a majority of them would fall into that Gen Z slash early millennial age slash millennial. So that key point right there is the strength that the youth hold, but they don't realize it. No, they do realize it, but they haven't started taking the actual steps of getting themselves to the poll station, getting all the IDs. And it's not their fault because there's a lot of things stopping them from doing that. But the number one thing I would suggest is a grassroots effort from the actual Gen Z themselves. I'm talking about you go around the city with a bus and you're picking up anybody who's under the age of 30, anyone who's under the age of 35. Get on this bus. We're going to take you to the government, what's it called? Government offices, and we're going to get IDs today. I don't know how realistic that would be. I don't know if the process would be immediate. I don't know if it would take weeks, but that's the first action that I believe the Kenyan youth back home should start focusing on is those IDs. Because at the end of the day, like the lady said, if we if we keep protesting and protesting and protesting, and come voting day, nobody shows up, it will all be in vain. All the lives that were lost, all the people who were injured, all the tragedies that happened will be in vain if that doesn't actually happen. And I agree with that. So the next part I wanted to talk about, apart from the strengthened population, is how realistic would it be for one of those young individuals to actually hold a position of power and like get elected into those positions? I do believe it's possible because we hold the numbers. We would be able to elect ourselves. But you would still have to sell that individual to the youth and to the elder generation. Because let's be realistic here. As as wise as someone may be and as well spoken as one of these people may, like one of the Gen Z may crop up and pop up and hold themselves as the leader or a thought leader, that's not enough to convince people that you should hold that position. That's not enough to convince people that you're not going to just go in there and do the same thing that the older generation has done. So the realisticness of it is there because of the numbers. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of convincing that has to be done to both the older and the younger generation. One thing I always think about is how a lot of our politicians who are currently in those positions, they're career politicians. These are people who who looked at Kenya's economy, and they decided to themselves. Some of them do love what's it called, the actual politics, and some of them are actually good at what they do. But I would argue that a majority of people in Kenya view politics as a way to get rich, which is bad. Which is bad because politics doesn't make anybody rich around the world. Anywhere you go around the world, whether it's Europe, the U.S., Asia, or this and the other, you go into business to make money. But the reverse happens in Kenya where people go into politics to make money. Here in the US, when you're getting a government job and these political jobs, they don't pay that well. But at the end of the day, you'll see what's it called, Kenyan politicians being some of the highest paid around the world. And this was also spoken on Lynn's channel. So with these career politicians that have been there for what, let's say even 10 years, decades, right? Some of them are so used to that position and the way that things have been going that they would be against the youth actually holding those positions. You're talking about somebody who can't think outside of politics. They don't know what to do, and they're probably already mentally set that they're going to be here for the next 10 years. So who knows? They have loans, they have a bunch of obligations that they're probably tied to. And for them to lose their job, they're just like, no, I will do anything I can to stop these youths from coming in. So the career politicians will be a big, big roadblock because they don't want to leave. Now, how let's say we do get somebody elected, somebody who manages to convince the general population, right, that hey, I know what I'm doing, this and the other. It would take so much, but we would also have to ensure that they don't do the same thing. Now, here's where Jimmy's ideas come in. I personally think that nobody should be able to hold any political position if they don't have a degree tying them to those type of positions. This idea of of what's it called, appointed positions where the president says, "Hey, I appoint my best friend as head of agriculture, head of energy, head of this." It blows my mind. It completely blows my mind because I'm just like, okay, we're operating in 2025. Um, yes, the what's it called? The managing directors of certain industries do have what's it called, qualifications or history in there, but the majority of them do not. The majority of them do not. I believe that somewhere within our constitution or whatever guidelines and bylaws we have, there should be clauses that state in order for someone to be head of, let's say, head of education, they must have worked as a teacher for a minimum of 5 years. In addition to that, they must have a degree or a PhD in teaching. In addition to that, they must, what's it called, have held a government educational position for at least 2 years before they get elected as the head of education. Um, that type of stuff should be written into our law, and I'm talking about for every single industry, whether not industry, every single sector, whether that's health, whether that's education, whether that's energy, or you name it. You have to have qualifications within that realm of sphere, whatever you want to call it, in order to hold those type of positions. The days of my uncle is gonna be head of this, my best friend is gonna be this, and my brother, yeah, you handle our food. Even though you've never even grown a potato, you've never grown a tomato, you're gonna make sure that Kenya eats. And I'm just like, no, that ends. Realistically, when Jimmy goes even deeper, I'm like, a president we should only be able someone should only be able to run for presidency if they've held a top position in another sector. So let's say we have Mr. Ruto right now. I don't know what other sectors he's headed before or whatever, but to give you an example, in order for him to be elected, he must have had either the head position in agriculture or the what's it called, administrative director of like fine energy, education, whatever, roads. They must have held a top position in one sector before they can hold the top position of the country that oversees all sectors. Um, I don't know. Maybe is that too much to ask for? Is that too crazy? Because as much as I, as Jimmy, would love to run for president, because I as well think that I can do it. I'm pretty sure so many Kenyans think that they could do run the country way better than what it's being run right now. I'm also humble enough to sit there and tell myself, like, let's be real. You've never done A, B, C, D. You've never done X, Y, Z. As much as your thoughts may mislead you to think that you could do it, you are generally not qualified to hold those positions. So, as our politics keeps on going and as the country keeps on growing and changing, I believe that those um those requirements should be put in place for our top positions. The days of what's it called electing people should be gone, and the youth should start mobilizing themselves right now, grassroots efforts to actually put themselves what's it called in a position to vote one of their own. And before they vote one of their own, they should use those same type of qualifications. Don't just elect somebody because they talk good. No. What's your degree in? Have you worked in any of our what's it called? Have you worked for KPLC before you try to what's it called go changing things for our energy? I also saw today that they try to sell KPLC. Crazy, stupid, dumb. But yeah, overall, I do believe that that's how things should be run. I also believe that the president shouldn't have as much power as he does. Realistically, if I was to control things, I would make it to where every time we go to elections, we're electing five people. One for food, health, and administration, another one who would handle infrastructure, another one who would handle environment, another one who would handle education, and another one who would handle finances. And they would have to operate in sync, but they can stop each other. Let's say the person who handles energy and yeah, our energy sector wants to build a pipeline through, let's say, some agricultural land, a pipeline carrying gas and something toxic. The environmental guy should be able to come in and stop that. But right now, we have Mr. Rude at the top who can almost make all the decisions. And, obviously certain things can be stopped and all that. But I do believe that instead of electing one genius, we could still have one president or one person heading. There should be five people you vote for. And our economy should be split up into like five different ways. That way, the psychopaths that are just eyeing power are almost unattracted to it. They're almost unattracted because they're like, I can only control this sector. I can only control this sector. The days of being the king of Kenya would be gone. You guys let me know in the comment section whether you think that the Kenyan youth can realistically get into those positions and what they should do to be able to elect one of their own and not repeat the cycle that's happened. Um, that's the end of this video. To conclude, I believe that qualifications should be in place. Also, one thing I wanted to add before I ended the video to prepare people for these positions of power in politics, I believe that let's say we already make it like you have to have a degree in agriculture before you hold any position in our agriculture sector. I believe that every single year with these graduates that are coming out of college, within each industry, there should be at least like 200 positions that cycle out every single year. And those college people go into those positions and work them for at least a year before they even try to get any of the higher positions. It should not be the case that somebody gets a degree in social sciences or social services and something and there's nothing in place for them when they get out of college. When you think about doctors, for example, here in America, before you get your doctor's license, you go through school, you do all this stuff, you have to go through residency. In residency, you're actually working in a hospital, you're actually working on patients, you're actually touching things in medicine and administering medicines to people and, overseeing real things. That should be almost like a mandatory requirement to get your degree. In order for you to get a degree in economics, you have to go and fulfill your 6 months in a government position that's already set aside for you as a graduate. Once you complete your 6 months and the government, what's it called, administration says, yeah, he did his part, he knows what he's doing, he can get his degree. You go back, you graduate, then you get your cap, and you're already graduating with experience rather than graduating with a degree in economics, and having no experience. Then you go and start working in a bank. Just my thoughts. Have positions within the government set aside for graduates and cycle those out every single year. That way we can already have people that we pick from. You don't have to go and and find who's the best orator, who has the gift of gab and can convince people. The days of convincing people because you're funny, gone. We should be able to pick from a crop of kids who've already worked in these industries, who've already worked with our power companies and gone out there and done actual work for like a year, 2 years before we put them in any type of position. That's the end of my rant, and I love y'all. I'll see you on the next one. Let me know in the comment section any thoughts. If you think that I'm a genius, or if you think that everything I said doesn't make sense, let me know. I love y'all. See you on the next one. Bye.